Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. This is the Hajir Show. Hajir and I are so thankful for everyone who tunes in every week, everyone who participates with comments, and everyone who shares the love. You know that we have a spectacular show for you every week. We highlight incredible people. We highlight politicians, journalists, gun violence prevention, educators, COVID, and vaccines. And this week we have like a 1 in a million show. You're never going to have a show like this ever again. We have incredible people here with us today. We have 3 guests, and they're here to tell us about just a profoundly important story that I think we all need to hear and learn from. And honestly, we're so thrilled to have our guests with us today. So we are joined by Celeste Trusty and Lee Horton and Dennis Horton. They are our special guests. And I'm going to give you guys just a quick rundown about why they are our guests, and then I'm going to let them take it away because this is going to be a spectacular show. So Lee and Dennis, they were both serving a life sentence, and they were imprisoned for 28 years, and they were just released this year, right? 2021. Yep. And so they're going to kind of walk us through that whole process, what went wrong, where they find themselves now, and how they're kind of taking a second chance at life. So thank you so much for being here, guys.
All right. How you doing? Thank you. I'm Lee. And, you know, what I first want to say, I always start off with saying, like, it's a miracle that I'm here, because in sentence to life, Pennsylvania, that means that you actually die in prison. And I just want to put that up front. You know, it's a lot of men that we left behind that are, if nothing don't happen, they're going to die in prison. Now, our situation, it might seem unique. It is unique because we're 2 brothers. We wound up in prison for a crime we didn't commit. You know what I mean? 28 years ago, we was at a cookout they told me they don't call them cookouts anymore, but we was at a cookout, you know, having just a regular ordinary day. We went out, we left the house, went out for a run to drive around, talk to some friends, see some people that, you know, I hadn't seen in a while. And we wound up in prison and didn't get released for 28 years. So, I mean, I can say that it's a nightmare, but saying it's a nightmare, that it was a nightmare would be like an understatement. You know, it was the worst possible scenario that could have happened, you know, and we went into the mode of, we had to fight for the next 27 years. It was a long, drawn out fight to get free. And, you know, thanks to a lot of good people and a lot of supporters, we wound up getting out of prison. But our case shows the necessity to have these second chances, to have, you know, criminal justice reform in a way where men can actually come home. I mean, I just want to tell you about myself real quick, and I'll let my brother tell you about him. When I was home, I worked every day. I had a wife, had 4 children. You know, we was newlyweds. Although my wife and I had been together since we were like 17 and 16, we were like really like newlyweds. We were in love with each other. We had 4 children, you know, and I had just taken the test to become a police officer. And how does that happen that I wound up in prison? And we know it was a case with us it was a case of mistaken identity. You know, it's a lot of stuff that happened in the case that, you know, wasn't right. You know, we see it every day. Guys get exonerated all the time. We see them come out of prison and we find out that the cops faked evidence, or they planted something, or they lied on the statements. You know, this just suffice to say, in our situation, you know, originally all the witnesses said it was 2 guys. Once they had all us in custody, it became 3 guys. So it was easy to look at, and it's easy to figure out. You know, our situation was a rush to judgment. The police never went back to look at the place where the other individual in our case came out of when they was following him. You know, they might have found everything there, and maybe we would never been sitting here. But, you know, things happen for a reason. You know, we went through what we went through. I believe, you know, you don't ever want to say you want to change your past. You know, I wish I never went to prison, but I don't regret my past. You know, I met a lot of good people, and I think that through that, I found a purpose in what my life is supposed to be about. And, you know, because I met a lot of men in prison that shouldn't be in there. And it's amazing because we're all coming out of prison and meeting each other outside of the prison. You know, we met each other in prison, and now we're home, and we're meeting up with each other, and we're all trying to do the same work. We're trying to do something to impact the communities that we live in. At the same time, we're also trying to reach back and bring some of the men home who we left behind. And, you know, our situation was a travesty. That's all I can say, you know. But one thing my grandma told us a long time ago, she said, life gives you what life gives you. It's up to you to do something with that life. And, you know, you're sitting in a prison and somebody comes to visit you and you're complaining about the situation and she tells you something like that. In the beginning, you don't really get it. The first thing you say is grandma losing her marbles or what? What does she mean? What it gives you. Did she realize I'm not supposed to be here? But, you know, she told us what she told us, and we sat on that, and that's where our story really begins at. You know, us coming to prison wasn't the end of our story. You know, that was pretty much kind of like the beginning of it.
And thank you for you know, allowing us on your show. My name is Dennis Horton, and you know, back then I just turned 23. I was engaged to be married, and I was just really kind of like starting my life out. You know, and you know, I mean, you know, at 23, life was good. I mean, you know, I worked every day. I guess I probably was just like the ordinary, average, everyday guy, just trying to strive and decide, you know, what exactly did he want to take his life at? You know what I mean? So, I mean, you know, and I just, you know, I cared about the lady I was with, but unfortunately, it didn't work out. I wound up in prison, like Lee said, and as you already know, kind of know the story. And I won't go into every detail because he pretty much touched on it. But I will try to, you know, come to maybe the middle somewhere. After our conviction, you know, we decided, you know, we were angry in the beginning, of course, furious, you know, but after a while, we decided, you know what I mean, you know, are we gonna move through this space angry? You know what I mean? Angry at just, you know, our situation, angry at life, or are we going to, you know, make this count for something? And, you know, like Lee said, my grandmother, when she made that statement, you know, we looked at each other and, you know, I knew what he was thinking. He knew what I was thinking. We didn't have to say the words out loud, you know, is grandmom crazy? But, you know, later on down the line, years later, through, you know, a lot of taking those moments and educating ourselves, and it became clear, you know what I mean, that you know, we're gonna do something. We're gonna make a difference. We're not only going to make a difference in our own lives, but we're going to make a difference in, you know, people's lives around us. You know what I mean? It's a lot of being in prison is a lot of sadness, is a lot of pain, there's a lot of trauma, there's a lot of dysfunction, you know. It's a lot of triumphs that people don't really know about. You know what I mean? I guess you can consider us, you know, maybe two of the triumphs among so many. You know what I mean? And I you know, Lee and I would be remiss if we didn't mention the women. You know, there's women that's deserving of a second chance. Also, these women been in prison, and men, you know, 30, 40, 50 years deserve the same opportunity to come out. You know what I mean? Like we did. You know, but again, coming back to the fact that, you know, we took advantage of every opportunity that availed itself to us, you know, and, you know, we helped folks, you know, that struggled in areas that we were fortunate that, you know, we did come out of, you know, we did graduate high school. We did, you know, come out of a household that was functional in a lot of ways, you know what I mean? You know, and we just, you know, we applied what we grew up with. You know, our mother and our father and our grandmother, they showed a lot of love to people in the community and things like that. So it was only natural for us to begin to do a lot of that work and or should I say the work to eventually, you know, come out of us that was already in us that, you know, we didn't really know was in us until it just started to unfold. And next thing you know, we were just helping people and just being involved in the prison community and just trying to make a difference. And we did that. And, you know, fortunately, you know, we came across someone and a counselor, and he, you know, kind of prodded us to file for commutation, which we thought was, you know, absurd because we never even thought that this would be an avenue or process that would even entertain us, being as though at the time we only had like 25 years in. You know, normally when they talk about commutation, A, they talk about saying you did it. B, they normally want somebody who's been in prison 35, 40 years. And we didn't come close to that. But listening to the counselor, and he brought somebody in to speak with us named Kathleen Brown, and we sat down with her, University of Penn nurse, and we sat down with her, and before you know it, you know, we wrote out our commutations and we were filing it. And you know, we in 2019 came our time and we got shot down, you know. But you know, then, you know, we really kind of learned about on that process of that going through before we got to the 2019 actual hearing. You know, we met somebody called John Fetterman, who was the lieutenant governor, who was championing our cause. Who, I remember Lee and I remember it was a prisoner, another prisoner. He came to the cell and said, "Hey, you know, they talking about y'all on the radio, and it's the lieutenant governor." And we like, talking about us? What is they saying? You know, normally you think a governor, he's talking down to you. He's never talking for you, you know. But in this case, you know, Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman, you know, he was, you know, talking about our case, talking about it as a travesty that we was in prison. Listen, let me just say this. We wrote, you know, tons of people, you know, trying to tell our story to them, tell them how we were innocent, you know, and no one, normally they would respond and say, you know, it's unfortunate, but there's really nothing, you know, I can do. You know what I mean? We've heard that so many times, but not John Fetterman. You know, he took the bull by the horns and he got in there, and without us even asking. That's the beauty of it. We never even asked one time. And he got in there and he helped us and he fought for us. And in 2019, although it was bittersweet because we got turned down, you know, that didn't change anything because he actually fought for us and believed in us. You know what I mean? And then came 2020 and I'll let Lee, you know, get in there.
Well, I mean, I want to go back to 1995 when we got convicted, because it seems like we always talk about, you know, we talk about where we're at. And like I said, it's a miracle that I'm here.
It is.
And see, for people to understand how much of a miracle it is, in 1994, we're convicted, we're sent upstate, we're sitting in the prison cell in the deepest of despair.
Yes.
Because we're trying to figure out, we're not in the same cell either. You know, neither one of us is used to prison. We're not guys who was coming to prison. We were not guys who were getting arrested on a regular basis, going in and out of jail, anything like that. So this was all new to us. And everything, all of the baggage that comes with being in prison, when we came, that's what it was. Prison is not the prisons of yesterday. You know, it was a far rougher place. So we're sitting there in the deepest despair trying to figure out, how did I get here? And, you know, we didn't have anything to keep us going but our family, you know, and our family stuck with us because, you know, everybody else deserted us.
And faith.
And, you know, and we sitting there and we're trying to figure, and just to say this, when he said we've been fighting from the day that they convicted us, from the very day we was arrested, we was in court. We have been in court continuously for the last until we got out of prison. We were in court continuously. When I mean continuous, I mean it's not one day that went by that we were not in some courtroom in the 27 years we were in prison trying to fight for our freedom. And a lot of people came on board before we got the commutation. The lawyers we would contact would say, you know, they've never seen anybody fight like we're fighting for their freedom, because when they would go to get our file, it would just be boxes upon boxes of filings that we filed ourselves. Because when we got arrested, went up, we had to learn the law ourselves. The lawyers wasn't doing anything for us. Our families paid lawyers. We had court-appointed lawyers, and none of them was pulling their weight in the courtroom for us. So we had to go back to the drawing board. We had to learn. Our grandma told us, learn it yourself. Do something about it. When we told her, we complained about it. We're in jail. This is a dark place. We don't want to be here. She said, well, do something about it then. And what would you say to that? You know what I'm saying? She wasn't like a person who was going to be like, oh, I'm sorry, baby. I wish I could do something. No, she was like, do something about it. And it was because of her that we went into the law library and we surrounded ourselves with it was a network in there of men who were helping each other. And these men took us in and they began to show us the techniques and how to file briefs and how to look up the law and how to look up the rules and how to file stuff in courts. And we became, for real, you know, I'm not bragging about it. We became exceptional in understanding how to file legal briefs and how to work in the courtrooms and work in motions courts and things like that. We became exceptional in that. And we know all of the main guys, the top guys in the DOC that were top jailhouse lawyers. But one thing we never did was we operated as jailhouse lawyers. The only thing we never did was we never took money. We always did everything for free because for me and my brother at the time, to us, our only revenge, the only way we could really fight and it was to help other guys get out. And by trying to help other guys get out, and we did help some get out, by helping other guys get out, it was like we taking revenge on the system for what they did to us. Because be honest with you, although we are free now, it's been times when we thought we're going to die in here. Mm-hmm. Like, this is it for us. Like, although we don't deserve it, we're going to die here. And what are we going to leave? We want to leave a legacy. We wanted to leave a legacy behind prison walls, you know. And we know that, you know, he says faith. We know that God had us. Mm-hmm. And we say that because everywhere we went, we wound up in the same cell together. That's impossible. I mean, people could tell you, everywhere we went, we wound up in the same cell together. Everywhere we went, we had staff members who was looking out for us, who we didn't even know. We found stuff out later about what staff members had did. And some of these staff members was like the worst. I went through a situation in the prison, just to give you a quick example. I went through a situation in the prison, and, you know, prisons are like this. Staff members can they can get on an attack with you for no reason at all. And we had a couple of staff members in this one institution that got hard on for us because they said we're just too good to be true, and they was trying to find something on us. So this one staff member who was, for most point, a butthead. They separated us for no reason. They just separated us. Put me on one side of jail, him on the other. And the staff member came to me one night, he usually works in the hole, hit the door, and he came out and he said, look, I want you to watch yourself. Never spoke to this guy in my life. He said, I want you to watch yourself because there's some guys in here that are trying to do something to you and your brother. And it's a group of us that don't want to see that happen because we've been knowing you for this many years. We know y'all are good guys. So, and he said, I know everybody says I'm a butthead, but I'm a fair butthead. That's what he said to me. That's what he said. And, you know, but it was, you know, counselors and people like that, you know, everybody in prison is not bad. Everybody that works there is not bad. I know that's what sometimes people say, but everybody that works there is not bad. But we're in there and we're thinking, how are we getting in these situations where we're able to be productive? Mm-hmm. Well, we create programs and superintendents allow us to do the programs. Where we ask to be involved with something, we get involved. Don't get me wrong, it took us 10 years to get to the point where people would allow us to do those things. 10 years working through and fighting our case and people seeing that, you know, my brother and I in the beginning, when we say it wasn't easy to get to where we was at. In the beginning, we spent from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. We didn't turn the TV on. The only thing we did was studied more, read books, trying to figure out a way to get out. We did that for 10 years straight. That's all we did. 6 a.m, no TV, read books and studied. And we worked with a whole lot of men, you know what I mean? And it was men who showed us love when we came in there, you know what I mean? We were strangers. The guys who saw us and let us use their typewriters when we didn't have a typewriter. It was like, here, just came to do it. One guy, he's passed away now, another lifer. We're in the cell. Our typewriter, if you don't have a typewriter in prison, that's your life's blood if you're fighting for your life. If you don't have a typewriter, the typewriter we had, just to quickly, my mom sent us a typewriter and the guy wouldn't let it in. The sergeant at the property room, for no reason, didn't let it in. We got the typewriter that everybody else had, but he was going on a tirade and he said some stuff. And then when I asked for the typewriter, he said, you ain't getting a typewriter anyway. He never gave it to me. But anyway, to make a long story short, another individual who found out about that brought his typewriter to us and told us, use it as long as you need to use it. Mm-hmm. I was even questioning why this guy even coming to the cell, because, you know, you got to question those things in prison. Like, who is this guy? We don't even know him. He turned out to be like a big brother to us. This man turned out to be like a big brother to us, looking out for us, helping us out. That's why I say it's a network in there of men. Now, he passed away from cancer, but when he was alive, you know, he made sure that, you know, we knew what to do and how to do it and how to get to what we needed to get. And, you know, I got 1,000 stories like that. But like I said, why did he even come to the cell? That's why I said, you know, somebody was looking out over us. And, you know, when I look back, I say to myself, you know, I was meant to be where I'm at to learn what I learned to be able to do the things I'm doing now. You know, I never wanted to be in prison. All my children grew up while I was in prison. My children are like 30 and 33. And when I went to prison, I had a 2-week-old baby, just born. We had 4 children. I had a 2-week-old baby. My son grew up without a father. I'm here now, you know, and we communicate now and we have a relationship now, but he's 28 years old. He went from being a baby in my arms to being a 28-year-old man.
But let me just share this. I got to share this part. You know, yeah, his kids is grown, you know, but, you know, the way they act around him, you know, in a lot of ways, you know, I can see it, how they miss their dad and how, you know, they still act like they children in some ways when they get around him, you know, they just showing that love and you know, like for instance, his oldest son, in particular, the son he lived with, him and his wife, you know, whenever they go anywhere, he wants to go with him. He wants to get in the car and he wants to go with his mother and father. And I understand that. And that's those moments that he missed. You know what I mean? He was a young kid growing up, and his daughter, she calls him, you know, regularly every night just to make sure he's there. You know, she calls him and she says, you know, Mom, my dad there, he's there, right? You know, because you know, they spend a lot of years.
To be true. It feels like it's too good to be true. I can't begin to express how I feel. I mean, from the day I heard about you two, from Celeste, you being on my mind and Heather's mind, and I'm not just saying that. Like, I am honored, like I said to you at the beginning, to be able to sit with you, with both of you. And I can't begin to express how, like, I have rage of emotions, anger, you know, sadness, so many emotions. And I said to Celeste earlier, 28, I can't imagine, you know, that happened to me and it stayed 28 hours or 2 hours. I'm claustrophobic. I have, you know, a lot of fears. And just to think about every second of those 28 hours that you stayed inside for something that you didn't do, and to face, and it's so young to be separated from your family and to face everything, regardless if you say there are good people in prison, it's a still corrupt system. There is a lot of corruption. There is a lot of bad things that happen, and it shouldn't happen to anyone. And, you know, every time you say something, you speak, my mind goes in, like, I want to say this, I want to say that. And I don't have enough words to express how I feel right now. I am just so glad that you both are here with us today. You're out and you are doing something. The society doesn't owe you anything, but you both, that's how good you are. You wanted to give back. You wanted to help. You know, you should wish everyone out there should be trying to make up for the years that you were wrongfully convicted. And on top of that, you are doing your part. You're making the best out of your second chance. And you're doing way more than people who hadn't been through tough life themselves. So it is just, I can keep talking, but Heather, Celeste.
You know, when we had Celeste on last year, we were talking about you guys when you were still in prison, and we were she was using you guys as an example of the cost of the prison system. And she wasn't talking about the monetary cost. She was talking about the human cost. She was talking about the fact that we had good people that were the best of society that couldn't get out to actually participate in society. She was talking about the families that were left behind, the extended family that's left behind. And so Celeste, come in and talk a little bit about that people don't really think about those dominoes that fall when something like this happens, and how I'm sure your families were the reason that you guys kept going the way you did.
Yeah, I mean, and that's one of the things that people really just don't think about, right? When we're talking about mass incarceration and when we talk about imprisonment, right? When you arrest a person, when you put a person in prison, it's not just the person, right? You're talking about the family, if they have children, their parents, their siblings, and the community. I mean, they're pulling people, often productive, wonderful people, out of the community. And in the case of the Hortons, you know, they are that amazing example of so many things that need to change. You know, we need avenues and mechanisms for second chances for so many reasons. But when you look at the Hortons, like that's the perfect example. When they were out for commutation and their superintendent, who is one of my absolute favorite people in the world, was testifying on their behalf, you know, she said she wanted to have them over for coffee and she couldn't wait to have them over for coffee. And that's the type of people that we actually have in prison. You know, like one of my favorite things to do is to actually go into prison and be in community with the people there, because that's actually how I got to meet Freedom and Lee for the first time, and how we, you know, got to be in each other's lives. But there's so many people, you know, in our Commonwealth alone, that if people actually took the time to go inside and get to know somebody, you realize they're just like us. And whether they made a mistake or whether they didn't make a mistake, they still deserve to be, you know, treated with humanity. And who among us has not changed, right? I mean, I certainly am different than I was when I was 20 or 25, even 30, right? So if we know we all change as people, why don't our laws reflect that, right? And so Pennsylvania, you know, we really do need to be looking for as many mechanisms as possible for second chances, because we have people like the Hortons who we are paying a terrible financial cost to keep in prison, right? And it's awful. I don't like talking about it in dollars and cents, but right now, we really could use the money, right, to fund so many other programs that could help our communities right now.
Yeah.
Instead, you know, if the Hortons weren't given clemency, we would be spending $50, $60, $70, $80,000 a year per brother to keep in prison. But now that money can be used elsewhere, you know? And so I think it's really important to highlight second chances and to put people in power who really, really fight for second chances, because this is the outcome, right? We have so many people just in Pennsylvania alone who, I mean, Hajir, you mentioned they're doing so much more for our society than so many people are who have not had that experience. And that's the same with almost everybody that we come in contact with who has been resentenced through the juvenile life of resentencing, through clemency. They're coming home and they're changing the world. So more second chances, please.
Yeah.
You know what? It doesn't matter. Sorry, Heather, just to add something, like we've seen harsher sentences. I don't care. People make mistakes. Things happen. You could commit a crime, but you can't be punished for like more than what you did. Like I seen, and we know, we talked about that many times about our system and how it's unfair. You can have two people that did the same crime and got convicted or they got sentenced to two different sentencing. And that is not fair. Like I'm sure you guys know that, and you dealt with that in prison. You hear stories.
I mean,
right?
Their own case, I'll turn it back over to them, but I mean, their own case is the exact example of what you're speaking about.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, we know countless cases of individuals. You can put them side by side, and they've committed the same crime, and they get different sentences. Sometimes black, white, sometimes Hispanic, white, sometimes you know, white guys get more time than some Asian guys. You never know what the mix is gonna be, but the sentences are always off. You know, you can have a guy that can take a gun and shoot somebody in the back of the head and get third degree and do 20 to 40, and then you got a guy that was just along for the ride. He's serving a life sentence. So you can never know who is going to be sentenced to what. And the thing is that sentencing is unfair most of the time. It should be based on, you know, you have a lot of men who went to prison at young ages, and they aged out of crime, who have life sentences, who still can't come home. And they haven't been the people who committed those crimes in 30 years. You know, I think the terminology has to change. The language has to change at the very beginning. The language has to change. So you have to stop calling people in prison offenders who've been in prison for 30 years. They're not offenders. They haven't committed crimes. In fact, some of these men make prison more safer. You know, we always say if you want to change and you want to stop the violence in the street, let some of the men out of prison who make prison safe. These men inside the prison because they've changed, they made amends for the crimes they committed, and they do good work inside prison for superintendents, for secretary, for all of them to keep prison safe. Of course, they can't do it all, but they do their best, and a lot of them do it. And they don't get paid to do it. They believe they're never coming home. So why do they do it? But they do it. It should be a mechanism for these men and women to come home, because if these men and women can come home, they can contribute something to, like I said, the violence that's going on in the city of Philadelphia right now, in Chester or wherever. You know.
And let me just say this, and I just want to echo Celeste. I mean, we got men and women that's been in prison 30, and I mean this is like mind-boggling, particularly in the state of Pennsylvania, 30, 40, and 55 years. And I don't say this lightly. I mean, we got, you know, like Lee said, you got folks that's, I mean, we talking about they committed the crimes that they in prison for when they was like 19 and 18 years old.
Yeah.
And like Lee said, they 30 and 40 years removed from the crime. I mean, they're no longer those individuals. I mean, when do we eventually just, you know, pick the building up off of them and allow them to just breathe a little bit? And these men and women that they've been on the inside, there's a reason why Pennsylvania prisons is some of the safest in the country. And we don't talk about those things. It's because and I'm not saying not only because officers don't do a wonderful job and staff don't do a wonderful job, but these men and women in these prisons also do a wonderful job in helping to keep these places safe by mentoring, you know what I mean, teaching programs, you know what I mean, working side by side with superintendents and deputy superintendents alike to help, you know what I mean, maintain order and help bring some of these young prisoners up to speed on how to you conduct yourself. You know what I mean? Because a lot of them have never been taught how to conduct themselves, you know, when they committed the crimes. Now, you know, they're taught these things. Now, like Lee said, they age out of crime. So why are we still keeping them in prison on the taxpayers' dime? It makes absolutely no sense. It's not making us safer. You know, like Lee said, bringing a lot of these men and women home, i.e. the juvenile lifers, people like myself and Lee, community lifers, and other lifers who've gotten out that's involved in trying to help make society safer. This is the only thing you would get in return. So why are we not doing this? Yeah. All the other states are doing it. You got states like New York. They have a mechanism. And guess what? New York is one of the biggest cities in the United States and one of the safest. And we can go do our research. They utilize a lot of these returning citizens back to society in the communities to help make the community safer. Nobody talks about that. Why can't we do the same thing in Pennsylvania?
And rehab, using the prison system. The prison has never been a rehab, and don't get me started in this. This is for another show. We know it's a form of extension to slavery, all of the above. But to do someone sitting there, you can help the ones that want to help themselves, like you guys wanted to learn, get your GED, become, when you get out, you would truly have a second chance, and you truly have if you're someone who want to learn an education degree, that you can actually become a part of the society. If you like to do some kind of technical schooling, they can do that. But we all know it is money making, and it's private. Like, I need to shut up. Go ahead.
I think you're 100% right when you say that prison, they offer what they say is rehabilitation, but it's not. You can't force a person to, number one, it's not one size fits all. You know, one of the things they never ask people when they come through the door is, what do you need for you to get to a place where you won't have to come back to prison? Or what do you need for you to get over what it was that caused you to commit this crime? They don't ask those questions. It's like, you smoke some weed, you got to take this rehabilitation program. Take this citizenship class, or this stress and anger, or this violence prevention, which is all, you know, is BS, because it's not working for anybody that's taking these classes. And you have to take these things though to get out. So guys, they just go sitting there and they take what they can get out. But it's a lot of times when we were doing what we was doing, we were trying to duplicate what we did. You know, we went through a process of we call it self-healing, because you get what you need on your own. You know, we were young black looking at what Malcolm X did, and Malcolm X went into prison and he took and used the prison to his benefit. When he came out, he was far more educated than he was when he went in. He understood the world, and that's what we did. So we wanted to duplicate that, and the way we did that was through the arts. You know, the one thing we could do, we figured that we could do inside was to use the arts in a way that would help to be like a catalyst for other individuals to start the process what we went through. And we did that through creating plays, and we did that through a crime. They used to let us do a crime victims awareness conference. They used to let us do Their Responsibility, where we used to have a play, and a part of the play was a 6-month program, basically, where we had a group of individuals who would learn lines from a play. We had a group of individuals that would create the props for the play. We had a group of individuals that was in audio, visual, and sounds. And then we had a group of individuals that was stage management. And we put all that together, and that was to give these guys a little bit of confidence that they could actually do things. And then we were going to play about whatever was going on in society, and then we would have workshops. And those workshops sometimes was 10 workshops, 15 workshops, and each workshop would have like 20 people. We would take staff members, politicians, professors from colleges, students, and we would put them all in a workshop with some of the guys from inside the prison, and then have discussions on what we saw in the play. And guys thrive from that. That was what they wanted to do. And then guys would go off and do their different things and become leaders in the community inside the prison based on what we was doing. But it wasn't about us saying that we know what you need. You know, we understood that every man in that prison was the expert of his own life. He's the expert, not us. He knows what better. He knows when he was lying. He knows when he did something wrong. And he knows what he needs to fix those things. And most guys want to fix or do something to change their lives. 99% of them guys, you very rarely run across a guy say, well, you know, I was born and I've been born to be in prison. I want to be in prison. Most guys say, I don't want to be here.
Yeah. Yeah. But you guys went in with the huge support. You have a good family, you have a foundation, and you have the leader personality. Not everyone has that going on for them. And that's another thing we need to watch for, and we need to help educate people about. If you arrest someone who's 17, 19, they're not all the same. My 19 years old, she's way advanced. If you put her with the 20-some years old who didn't get a chance to have someone, a father figure, a mother figure, a grandma figure in your case too, someone who is supporting you and showing you the way. So when they make the mistake, maybe they just made it of ignorance. They didn't know. Or, you know, that was the only solution for them. They didn't know better. So someone like you and someone who step up and become a leader and try to change and try to educate and help those people, because some of them might even not know. You said you know who you are and you know what you wanted, but some people don't even know what they wanted. They need a map, they need a guide, and that map could either take them to the right way or bring them back to the same problem that they fled off from the first time.
And let me just add this. And we have the thing about, I think that one of the biggest things that we miss and we don't often talk about is people on the inside that struggle with mental health issues. You know, and Lee and I, we were fortunate. We were trained as mental health workers, and we work with countless men, who struggle with past trauma that led to their mental health issues, addiction issues that led to their mental health issues, or just coming out of situations that just passed down from generation to generation from family members that led to their mental health issues. And we worked with a lot of those men, you know what I mean? And the thing is this, a lot of these men are coming back to society. So, we need to be able to assist them and give them what they need, and so they can be healed, so they can come back better. You know what I mean? And we thought that we did that through the Certified Peer Support Specialist program. And we were RAP facilitators, and now I'm happy to say that we are advanced RAP facilitators now. You know what I mean? Meaning we can train those individuals on the inside, to be what we used to be, which was RAP facilitators. And we help, help to bring healing and hope, to men who often felt like there was no hope, or felt like there was no way. You know what I mean? So I'm definitely, those are I believe one of our biggest accomplishments, and we're proud of that. You know what I mean? Working with the men in the RHU, which if anybody know what that is, restrictive housing unit, the hole, the bucket, whatever you want to call it. You know what I mean? And we made a difference, and we made an impact, a positive impact. And I think that's one of our biggest accomplishments on the inside. Besides, like Lee said, the Day of Responsibility and crime victim awareness conferences and mental health seminars and on and on and on. And, and the inside out programs, the prison exchange program with universities and prisoners would do classes together, or courses together. And, we loved that, and we reveled in doing that. And that only challenged us to be better and allowed us an opportunity to see the world in a different way that we probably would have never saw it had we not been influenced by those exchanges.
Right. And it was right. And we had a lot of support in our family. Mm-hmm. And, my mom, and I would be remiss if I didn't say something about my mom. My mom was, after my grandma passed, she was like my grandma was the driving force in the beginning, because she was like the head of the household, the head of the family. Even my father, my grandma was the head. And then my mom took over. And when she started, my mom went from Mount Airy. She used to live in Mount Airy. And she went from Mount Airy and her support financially with us until she was living in projects, because she took everything and she put it behind us. I mean, every dollar she had, every dollar she could make. My mom, to get lawyers, she would sell dinners, and she would raise money. She would work around the clock on the weekend to raise money to get lawyers. So unfortunately, in 2019, after we were first denied, she passed. My mom passed away. But when she died, she had lost her voice. She was bedridden, everything, but she was able to talk for a little while. And she told us then, after all these years, she said, y'all are actually going home. And she was like confident that we was going home, that we didn't know we was going home yet. We were just denied. And we have been denied. And we was like, we didn't even want to talk to her about it, because we didn't want to disappoint them anymore, because they have been disappointed so many times in getting up to this point. And she said we was going home. And the reason why she said we was going home is because she knew, she said, y'all have people behind you on that. And then she at that time it was the lieutenant governor, and it was also, Celeste don't like to take any credit for it, but Celeste deserve a lot of credit, because
that's right.
She was vocal, and she was out in the forefront. That's right. And she was fighting for us. And I met Celeste a few times, but we didn't know Celeste like that. These were people who were just like, fighting for what they thought was right. Right. And the reason why we work for John Fetterman now, to help try to get him elected to the United States Senate. I hope all your viewers go out and vote for him, because he is somebody who cares about second chances, but also he's somebody who will stand and do what's right when it's time to do it, and not back off when it's not popular. Because we wasn't popular. We was not by a long shot popular. You know what I mean? We refused to go into the commutation process and to say we committed a crime we didn't commit. Even when it was an opportunity, if we would have said we did it, we probably would have came home. It was like almost, I would say guaranteed, but it was like almost guaranteed that if you say you did it, you can walk out of here and we'll get these votes. We couldn't do it because my mom sacrificed too much. I would have rather died in prison than to, dishonor her name by going in there and saying I did something that I know that I didn't do, and that she gave up pretty much her whole life to help us prove that we didn't do. And she died before we could do it, but she knew that we was going to do, that we had supporters. And at that time, that's when the lieutenant governor came on, and everybody was telling her they got the lieutenant governor. He's talking about him. He's fighting for him. And she was like, she's tired, and she was like, okay, I'm going there. And we haven't been able to even go to our gravesite yet.
Yeah.
Wow. So how do we help the people that are like you that are currently in prison? How do we stop this from happening in the future? How do we help
shout out to Patricia? That's Patricia.
Yeah, Patricia Cummings.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one way. Patricia Cummings, the Larry Krasner, but also the judges. The judges got to be on board with this. Why are judges fighting against men coming home who are 9 times out of 10 innocent, and then some of them just got a broad deal? There's some guys that are in prison that are way past the time that they should be in prison. Change the PCRA time bar. We need the PCRA time bar. We couldn't get out of prison, not because we couldn't prove anything, but because the PCRA time bar prevented us from actually bringing the evidence to court.
Yeah.
Wow.
Time bar. And so they say after a year, you can't bring it.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Celeste.
What I also want to say is, like, one thing that I don't think enough people realize is how much political power every single person has. Our state representatives, our state senators, our federal representatives, they work for us and we pay their salaries. And so we really can be advocates for change. And a lot of these mechanisms, a lot of these changes that we need are legislative. We need people in office who support these absolutely necessary changes, because who can look at Freedom and Lee and say that they didn't deserve to be home? And so
Right.
Talk to your representatives, talk to your community members, and ask your representatives in office if they're fighting for second chances. And if not, why not? Ask if they've gone inside and met people who are in prison. Ask if they even know how much money we are spending in Pennsylvania to incarcerate people, right? Like Freedom and Lee, who do not need to be there. And so really you can write letters to the editor, you can, tweet about it, but really just use your voice in whatever way you can, and really try to vote whenever you can vote. And if you care about second chances, try to elect people who care about second chances also. Oftentimes, we're talking about prosecutors, right? Oftentimes prosecutors are not helpful in the fight for second chances, but you see how important it is when you elect one prosecutor who supports second chances. How many people now in Philadelphia are home and absolutely changing the community, out there every night trying to stop violence, right? And doing the absolute best that they can to change the world and make us a safer, stronger place, simply because we elected people in power who care about second chances, like John Fetterman, like Larry Krasner. Those two, people who were elected were able to work together in order to get people, more people home. And so please be aware that everyone that you elect can actually make a difference, right? So please use your vote to make a difference.
So let me ask you a question here, and if I can briefly, it's not that difficult for us to have parole for lifers. We're not saying parole for people who don't deserve it. We're saying that you go before the parole board like anybody else to get free. You have to go, it's a process. You go before the parole board, and the parole board, do evaluation of what you've been doing for the last, let's say 20, 25 years while you was in prison. And you make that parole based on your merit. If you've been an individual in there that showed a propensity for violence and you can't change, then you go nowhere. You stay in prison until the day you die. But if you show, if you've shown yourself to be somebody who's changed and no longer that person, that young kid that you used to be, you know what I mean? And you're making a difference, and you made a lot of strides in your life, and you're making a difference where you're at, then why not give that person an opportunity to go back to society and do a lot of the things that you see these juvenile lifers doing, that you see individual men and women that's been commutated out doing. And also what we can do on the board of pardons. Why do we still have this unanimous? A person can't get out of prison unless they got every single vote. Why can't it be the majority? Anything we operate within a society, we operate with a majority vote, not with a unanimous vote.
Yeah.
So why you need every single vote in order to get out of prison? We need to change that back, and we can do that. That's not something we can do that now. You know what I mean? We can figure out ways to get that on the ballot to start the process of doing that.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
And we don't want to wait 25 years. We want people.
Just imagine that we had that. The thing is this: we can have a fail-safe. Those things will be fail-safe. For people to have a decent night's sleep, to know that we have a system that has checks and balances. So if a man or woman get wrongfully convicted, you know what I mean, they don't have to die in prison. and then we learn they died in prison and they were innocent and they never did the crime, you know, we can have an opportunity for them to be able to get out maybe after 20, 25 years, you know, and then we can talk about the fact that they were innocent, but at least we do have an opportunity for them to get out. In our situation, there was no opportunity. We would have died in prison. Just that simple.
And then you also want to have a way out for men who they've aged out of crime.
Mm-hmm.
They after 15 years, you can see by their records inside prison that they're no longer the people they were when they came in. So after 40 years, why is these people still in prison? After being model prisoners for 25, 30, 40 years in prison. I mean, you got men that's in there that the prison system depends on. If these men were not, what they is someone thing they do, and I'm gonna leave it at this. They don't even like to transfer you from jail to jail because they say if you're a good so-called good inmate or model prisoner, then you're conducive to making everything work. So they don't want to let you go. Yeah. And that's what it seems like it comes to be the situation with the prison. That they have all these men and women that are helping to keep the system going, and they don't want to let these men and women out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And just to piggyback quickly, and after that, I'm just going to shut up and just sit aside.
No. I was ready to ask you and Celeste that we have to do a round two, if you allow us, because you know, this is just getting to know you. I didn't get a chance. Heather didn't get a chance to ask. We have a lightning round. We have questions, and I know there is a lot that you can do and say. And you know what? 1 hour is not good enough. So say what you have to say, but this is an open invitation for the following week. We have to see. You need to come.
I was just going to say this briefly. We had an individual that was in prison 68 years. His name was Joseph Legion. How do we? What kind of society that we allow a man to be in prison from 15 years old to 80, almost 85 years old? I think he was. Yeah. And we just released him not too long ago. That is a barbaric system to put a 15-year-old child in prison all the way up until he's 85 years old. This is not who we are. This is not what we're supposed to do. And most people didn't know that this was being done in their name. And this is why we got to change this. Because right now you got men and women that's been sitting in prison 50 and 55 years and more than that. So this is what we have to change. And this is unacceptable to us, and it should be unacceptable to every American.
Yeah, I think that they all also operate with the benefit of out of sight, out of mind. You're there, and so they can keep running, but as now we have you guys, now that we have you, we have other examples. I think that's going to be a huge benefit, because I'm listening to you guys and I'm like, you shouldn't be in prison. You should be running for president. Like this is like, these are the people that we need.
Yes. I mean, prison walls are meant to keep people in, but they're meant to keep society out as well. Yes. Right. Every time you see somebody who is being arrested on TV, you know what they show, right? Law and Order completely misrepresents what the prison system does, what the legal system does, right?
Mm-hmm. I wish I told my girlfriend that when she tell me to wash the dishes.
But really, everybody should, because like these are the people who we have inside, right? Mm-hmm. Every single person should understand that these are the people that we are removing from society, right? Free and freedom. And how much better are we now that they're home? I'm gonna cry. We're so much better now that they are home, right? Yes. So we need to just duplicate this and bring so many more people home, because as Freedom said, people don't understand we are doing this in your name because we're paying for it. Our tax dollars are paying to perpetuate a system that keeps people in prison until the day that they die without any mechanism for relief, right? Except for, clemency, which is wonderful, but we need to expand that. We need to have so many more opportunities.
Yeah. So when you guys come back, we'll touch on things like what went wrong. Was it the police? Was it the judges? Was it the timing? Was it judgments? Was it prison? we can talk about what did it feel like to come out and have a second chance? Were there things that you like planned pitfalls for when you got out that you fell into that were almost things that we need to change as well? So let's end this one.
And on top of that, I would love to hear how you felt during this whole time. Like,
I know during the,
because this is, I can't breathe. Just to think about it. Sorry, go for it.
You guys like kind of glaze over like the conviction and the actual trial. That's where I kept going. Like, I can't even imagine the mental strain and what that does to a person during that process before your fate's decided. After that, a lot of those questions go out the window, but that'll be for next time. So let's end. We like to end with like kind of a lightning round where we can learn a little bit more about who you are as a person. And so the first question is going to be for the brothers. And so I want to know specifically for you guys, what was, like when you got out 28 years, what did you have to learn? Cell phones, Uber, Zooms, like give us kind of like a quick rundown of everything that you had to like become good at real quick.
Well, of course, the cell phones, we didn't know how to use the cell phones at all. So that was hard. But one of the things I had to learn was the traffic lights. You know, when I first got out, I was walking, I had to go someplace and I was coming back and I didn't know whether the traffic light was saying walk or stop because it had the little man on there. They didn't have that when I left the streets. It had the little man on there and it was counting down and I seen the countdown. I waited till the countdown stopped and then I tried to walk across the street and it was a real busy highway intersection. And all the cars were coming and they stopped and they were looking at me and I was looking at them like, well, what did I do something wrong? Like, and they were looking at me like, bro, get out the street. And I was like, I got the right of way. And I'm talking to him. He's like, you don't got the right of way. And I was like, I got the right of way. The number stopped. And I didn't know. And
it was that actually makes sense. Like a countdown, like 3, 2, 1, go.
Yeah. Go. That's what I thought it was saying, but it wasn't that. And, you know, besides the cell phone, but I mean, we had to get used to a whole lot of things. But let me just say this. After being in prison for as long as we've been in prison, nothing we had to get used to was that bad at all. Mm-hmm. There's no bad days when you come home from prison after being in there that long. Any of your bad days are good days.
Yes, that's right.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful, beautiful.
Because if you're sick and you're dying, even if you're dying, you'd rather die out here than die in there.
Well, I'll tell you this. When I went into CVS, a friend of mine, pulled over and said, all right, go in CVS and grab this real quick. And so I went in CVS and I first thing I got what I needed. And then I was marching up to the checkout counter to pay for it. There was nobody there. So I seen a couple of workers in the aisle. So I'm thinking, and so I stood there for like maybe about 5 minutes. So I'm thinking they're just derelict in doing their job. So I'm ready to march over there and like giving them a piece of my mind. About why you guys are not up there manning the cash registers. So, and you keep in mind they got the quick checkout. So everybody pretty much. So I went to the individuals that worked there and I said, hey, I'm ready to pay for this. I need to go. I got things I got to do. With just a little bit of attitude, not a lot. And so they said, sir, you pay for it yourself. And I said, what do you think I pay for it myself? How am I going to pay for it myself? So what did you say? I just take it and just leave? Like, no, you just see right there. And I was like, well, can you show me? Because I don't know what she's talking about. And, he took me up and he showed me and I actually paid for it myself and keep it moving. So that this is a different place we are versus when we went in. Every place, supermarket has a quick checkout. You go right there, you stick your card in and you pay for your food, you scan it yourself, and that was something I had to get used to, and it was just a real shock to me to see that we had a place where computers are really running everything.
Right.
Yeah. I want to add to that. When we first came home, a bunch of us were all commuted, and we was trying to go into a fast food restaurant, and we couldn't find one to do anything in because we didn't know how to go about. Everything was at a kiosk, so we didn't know how to do it. So we kept going from one to the next one to the next one. Nobody wanted to take money, and we were just like, lost.
So tell us like your go-to home cooked meal. Like when you got home, what was a meal that you wanted to be cooked? Where did you want to go to eat? What did you want to sit down and actually have a meal? Like tell us the secret.
Well, the only thing, one of my first thing that I wanted was actually asparagus.
Oh.
Really?
Asparagus.
So let's have to come back. She had to turn her camera on.
Lee and I do not eat the same way. Let me.
I'm a vegetarian. I've been a vegetarian for since I've been in prison the whole time. And so I've been thinking about asparagus for all these years. And you know, what I had was, so the meal I had was asparagus. It was charred Brussels sprouts.
I cannot eat Brussels sprouts.
And it was eggplant, fried eggplant.
Oh,
Wow.
I
Not
will
what I thought
make
you were
you
gonna
the
say.
best fried eggplant. I promise.
Right.
It's a fried eggplant salad that you never ate before. It's a Sudanese dish. So
Okay.
that will be from me. And how
Okay.
about you?
Me, listen, I wanted, you know, and I'm a vegetarian as well. So I wanted, you know, I wanted a really good grilled garden burger. I wanted some really grilled tofu. I wanted some brown rice that's just nice and fluffy and just, you know, that tastes so good. And that, you know, and I wanted some ice cream because I can't eat regular ice cream, but I can get plant-based ice cream, and it's like the best tasting you ever want to taste. It's out of this world.
Well, I don't eat plant-based ice cream. I eat almond milk ice cream.
You know.
Oh,
There you
okay.
go. There you go. So
So-
what?
You healthy.
And it's good. It's good. You know, the almond milk ice cream or the plant-based ice cream is wonderful. They have all
I'll
kinds
try
of
it.
flavors, and you know, because I haven't had ice cream in so many years, and it was like just so wonderful. And I finally had a grilled plant-based hot dog on the grill.
But it seems like every
So
time I
good.
tell somebody that the stuff tastes like regular meat or regular food, I had some things they got called plant-based nuggets, chicken nuggets, whatever you want to call them, but they're not real chicken nuggets. They're like plant-based. And I told somebody, I said, these taste just like chicken.
They do.
And the guy took a piece and he ate one and he looked over at me and said, bro, you ain't ate chicken in a long time.
You don't know what chicken you're talking about.
I don't know what chicken tastes like anymore. So
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so we'll finish on this one. Tell us something that you guys are looking forward to. Is it the holidays with your family? Is it like just taking a walk? Like, I mean, you guys are gonna have such a different answer than everybody else that we asked that question to.
yeah, what I look forward to is every Saturday I do take a long walk with my wife, and lately it's been with my granddaughter. We actually walk like almost 9 miles this Saturday.
Oh,
We walked
wow.
around Midville and Ridge, around that area around there. We walked all up to the art museum, walked down Ben Franklin, went up to a playground around there somewhere, let her play, and then we walked back. So, and I do that every Saturday.
I want to
Well,
be
let me-
your friend.
But let me throw this out there. We went to the movie theater, and it was so wonderful. And this was a few weeks back ago, but it was so wonderful to be in the movie theater in the reclining seats. You know, folks taking the order. You know, out there, popcorn was just like the best thing I ever tasted. Listen, the ice cream was good, but the popcorn was like. I couldn't do that too often because I would definitely clog my arteries up with the
That'd be worth it. Yeah.
Yes, but like they say, my girlfriend, she likes to run a lot, so in order for me to keep up with her, I got to run with her. So we ran. So she runs like 7 miles a day.
Oh, wow.
So I ran 6 miles with her Saturday, and then we walked 5. So she's really like, so I got to be on my game, and it is fun, and it's beautiful out, and it's just like running down near the water, and you know, and I don't get a chance to look at the water until we stop running because I'm too busy huffing and puffing, you know, the whole. But it's just so beautiful, the trail, and just it is so wonderful to be out and about and not be in handcuffs and just be just living a normal life.
I can't. I mean, you guys, it's got to be like 4 shows at this point because I mean, you guys are just incredible. So I wrote down some things that you guys said when you were talking, and just if everyone watching this can just hear the words that the men that were in prison for 28 years decided to use today: fortunate, opportunity, productive, involved, good people. Shout out to the women, my mother, my father, help, healing. I mean, the wonderful job the people in the prison did. We wanted to be a catalyst. We wanted to help people. That is just absolutely the best of the best people. So, I mean, that's who we need to keep in our sights because that's who we, you know, you're an example of what is in prison and what can be out of prison. So we thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for being here. Celeste, as always, we love you, love you, love you. And
you didn't get to talk, so you better come.
They're so much better than I am.
Oh my God, I can't even begin to say if we sit there and talk to you for 24 hours straight is not going to be enough. I am just honored and thankful for your existence, for you being alive, first of all, and for your parent who raised you and brought you to this life, and for the second chance, and for you just being in our life now, like personally my life, because you are such an inspiration. And, you know, just people, I hope people can sit and listen to you and think everything goes in their life is irrelevant. Like, I don't care what you go through. Just think and imagine about how you two felt. And I think that's going to give me the push for the rest of my life. So I thank you for that. I truly thank you for this.
Man, thank you for having us on.
And we will have you next week. We will talk to Celeste and we'll talk to you after we finish. And we are truly, truly blessed to have you again.
Okay.
Thank you.